There's, you know how people are always struggling. Even people you don't even know are struggling, hurting.
Yeah.
What's something you could say to them right now?
When somebody is worried about their job, their future, or their marriage, or their kids, when you say be anxious for absolutely positively nothing, it's like, why is that in the Bible?
Yeah, Pastor, thank you for taking time. I mean, like I was sharing earlier today, one of the blessings I think is just like the rich history that we have, not just in Calvary Chapel, but when I came here and I got to meet you and kind of learning like the history that you have in Calvary Chapel, and we call you the GOAT. I don't know if you know that.
No, what's that? What does
Greatest
that mean?
of all time, the GOAT pastor.
All right.
So I just wanted to kind of ask you to whatever wisdom you'd like to share with us.
Wow.
Specifically interested, like your history. How did you start? How did you know that this calling was on your life? And maybe you could take us back to whatever you want to share.
Yeah, there's a lot of starts and stops along the way. I was at a point in my life to where I had been called a pastor, and I was involved in a church, and I was at a point where I didn't want to do that anymore, Pastor David, because certain things had happened. I just, the hurts that take place in the ministry, it just seemed like it was too much for my family. But somebody asked me along the way if I would teach a Bible study, and I really missed that. I not only miss teaching, I think the thing that's most important is the study and the preparation, the thrill of discovery. And since I wasn't doing any teaching, I wasn't discovering anything new, And so I said, yeah, we'll do that. It was the beginning of something that I was running away from, beginning of being a pastor of a church. And so that's how our church started. It was in our home, Susie's and mine. It started to grow from a midweek Bible study to we're meeting in our home on Sunday mornings as well. Susie did the Sunday school out in the garage. Nursery was in one of the boys' bedrooms, so we were improvising all along the way. And I had a tent making. I had my own business, so we didn't need anything from the church, but it was a pleasure to just be able to give to it. We didn't even call it a church, but it just blossomed from there. We went various different locations as we kept growing and expanding. Storefront was before we ever moved to the address that we're at now. The building that we refer to as the Fellowship Hall was our sanctuary. The room that we're sitting in right now is my office. It just kept growing and growing. And finally, the group of guys that I would have considered elders at the time, they really were. We had been incorporated. We were legal with every aspect that you would need to be a functioning church. We were able to purchased this place with the help of Pastor Chuck Smith. He loaned us, we had some property, we sold that. He loaned us what we couldn't come up with and gave us 5 years to pay it off. We were able to do that. Lord bless. It just, where we're at today was something that was far from my imagination. What we've been able to see happen here at this location has just been amazing to me. And the very thing that I was running away from, I'm thankful for. And it's just really, really a blessing to have been able to be a part of this particular church. And we've had good people help us out every step of the way.
That thing that you were running away from, what was it that finally got you to stop running? That process of I'm running from the pain, from the potential pain. We know in ministry can be very painful sometimes.
There was a reservation that I had. I quit running from the functionality of the church and running away from the position of being the shepherd of the flock. But I hung on to my business, and because that was my security blanket. I knew I could always go back to that. I have it. And then that board that I had mentioned had said, you have to make a choice. Because it would pull me away from some of the things I needed to do there. I had to go and take care of the business aspect. And then I could go take care of the church. And so I was pulled one way or the other, depending on what was going on. And when they said that you have to make a decision, I realized that they were right. And I made a decision to sell the business, be fully committed to Calvary Chapel Hemet, and that was just a big release. I no longer had any options, but it was so satisfying, and it was as though that I belong. I'm called here to this place, to more importantly, called to these people. Ministered up in Idlewild, where I lived today. That was just a great experience, but I realized I was called to these people, and never left.
How long has it been?
The exact years, I think we incorporated in 1980, 1982. I've never wanted the big birthday candles and stuff for every celebration. It was like I'm always looking forward to the next opportunity that the Lord has for us. So, yeah, it's been quite a while.
When you first started Calvary Chapel Hemet, the Lord obviously was in it. You said at our last meeting that you feel like your job is to be a trailblazer.
To be a what?
A trailblazer.
Oh, okay.
And you've always, since I've known you, been spearheading things. You've been leading from the front, whether it was at our men's conference, picking up cases of water and things that we've done here in ministry together, always leading from the front. What has changed over the years as far as your zeal? It seems like it's still the same as what a young man's zeal would be. You remind me of Caleb, still going in there and taking on giants. But what has changed in ministry for you since you started until now, if anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything. You said lead from the front. I don't know how else anyone leads. I just think that as, first of all, as a man, as a husband, as a father, when you learn to lead your family, not be I'm the boss of the family, but to be the priest of the home. When you learn that, it's an easy transition to lead the flock. So I guess that's the only way I can see that you can lead and help make the next transition. So I'm up there in age. So I started out when I was your age in 79 next month. I've seen a lot of changes but we're still solid to the Word. We preach the gospel. We go through the Bible chapter by chapter. I mean, those are the essential things, but we find new ways of reaching out. I've seen the reason that we were able to buy this church building was because that was an older church. They had built, I think this was like 6 years old when we bought it. They remodeled and added on. So all the remodel, all the fellowship hall is like brand spanking new. But they weren't willing to change the method in which they preached the gospel. And that church died out. And I've seen it over and over again throughout the years. I embrace change. I look for it. I'm excited when I see it, and we give it a try. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, hey, we'll wait.
How have you handled getting people to follow change? Change is hard for not just the people who are leading the change, but also for those that are a part of the change. How have you been able to get people to buy into what you're doing and what the calling God has put on you when it comes to change?
I think I've been just really fortunate that there's been some people that, although that they would be resistant on their own, some of these people have been here from like day one. There's one family that were part of the home Bible study that I mentioned. So I think that they have learned to trust I mean, watch, kind of help. And when you have enough people that are willing to just, go ahead and move on with the change, you can bring it about. And some of our changes have cost us people. They just, were not willing to go with it. And you have to realize that may be, it's not spiritual collateral damage because they're born again Christians and they're finding someplace new. But you just don't have that personal relationship with them because they went someplace new because of the change. But I can't allow that to hold me back. Yeah. What God is calling us to do.
I'm particularly interested with your when you transition from selling your business. For obvious reasons, I own a business too, and so when you did that, the board was asking you what was the state of the church at the time. I mean, was the church financially well off, or was that kind of a big step of faith for letting go of that security blanket and saying, you know what, I'm just going to step in faith here? Or was it kind of easier because you're like, the church will be able to support me and it's not an issue? How does that work?
Being in business, you understand this. So the church was able to afford a modest income for one person, for the pastor, very modest. But in selling the business, I knew that I could project out that I could use the sale of the business to supplement my personal family needs. So it was just a calculated step, a prayerful step, and say, okay, I can, have the income that the church could afford, and then, the residual amount from after that, from the sale. David is a smooth transition, and so later on, we could add a secretary, and then later on, maybe I could get a little bit of a raise, kind of a thing. So God's taken care of us. I've really never been in need and want. So
what's been the hardest thing that you've learned in ministry?
Hardest thing. There was a time when my dad was pastoring. I would say he wasn't considered a pastor, but he was pastoring the senior fellowship. And at the same time, my youngest son was pastoring our youth, our high school. And it was just a really great time for me. I just kind of felt like three generations all right here, and we're all working for the Lord, and we're all in harmony. It was really neat. Matt, our youngest son, and Angela, his wife, it was a hard time for him. A lot of false accusations that came around. I had encouraged him. You needed a tent-making job. That's the way your old man did it, And if the Lord calls you out, he did that, and he decided just to go with that. But I always told him, I said, this ministry is not a job. If it's a job, you got to get out. It's a calling. And he realized that he wasn't called. And that was a tough time, just to watch that, kind of dwindle away, and my father aging and no longer being able to be involved in that. It was just kind of, a lonely time. There's been times to where you realize that you're going to have to do this all by yourself, kind of a feeling that you have, but you're really not by yourself.
What about one of the best things that you've experienced in ministry?
That same son performing his wedding. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. That changed the way that I've done every single wedding since. It has really, really affected me, with that. So, yeah, that was the best thing.
Amen. Where would you like to see Calvary Chapel, Hemet, the next 5 years?
Next 5 years? As you know from some of our discussions, that I'm watching for transition. And whoever that next senior pastor is, wherever that is, I don't want to leave them with, I want them to be able to start out with, fresh, not something that Calvary Chapel needs to accomplish just so they can concentrate on feeding the flock and taking care of the business aspect of it. I just want to make sure that within that time frame, whenever it is, whether it's 5 years or, I want it to be at the next level. And I don't know where the next level is, because every time we get to the next level, I'm looking for the one after that. So I hope that part never changes. Yeah. Okay, we did that. Now what can we do? What can we accomplish? What can we do? How can we do it better?
Is there any kind of anything that worries you about transitioning?
That worries me?
Yeah.
Well, when you birth a church, it's that's your baby. You don't want to see it fail. So having the right people in the right positions is extremely important at this stage, because I've seen what happens to Calvary Chapels when the wrong person steps into the shoes of the previous pastor. That's always a difficult transition for the flock. They've got their faith, in Christ for sure, but they wind up trusting the pastor. And when you've got someone new that you're supposed to put that same kind of trust in, it doesn't happen automatically. So it takes a while to be able to earn that trust. And so I've seen a lot of people move from one church to another just because of the transition of the pastor. That's the only thing that I want the hurdle to be. It takes an average of 5 years to get over that hump. And that means that some do it in 3 years, some do it in less. Many don't ever do it at all. They never make it, and the church flounders. And you see empty churches, and that's the reason why. So again, kind of like combining all these, all the questions, I want it to be at that level. So there's this as smooth transition as possible. The fear of that is like, you're letting go. So you let God. And just kind of, I want to be one of those senior pastors that has a function in the church, teaching the seniors, handing out bulletins. I don't care what it is. You just want to be a part of that smooth transition, and so I hope that's the way it goes.
Yeah. The way you're saying, like the transitioning, and what would you say to the next pastor? What piece of advice could you give them of all of the things you've learned over the years? If you could say, hey, this is one thing I'd like to leave you with, what would that be?
I think to remind him of what he already knows. Your family is your first flock. And you've got to be faithful to your first flock. You've got to take care of your children. You've got to take care of your wife. You've got to minister to them. And when that's happening, then ministering to others is a lot easier. It's automatically teamwork when you're ministering to your wife, and now you've got this undefeatable team between you, your wife, and Jesus to be able to handle the difficulties that will arise, and they're inevitable. They happen all the time. It's how you handle them that will make a huge difference. And I take the counsel of my wife. I want to see her from her perspective, and to be able to meet a particular challenge that we might be having at the church. And oftentimes it's different from the way I would handle it. And sometimes, I don't go in a direction that she would like to see. But I've got that input and I've got that support, and it makes ministry a heck of a lot more enjoyable. And I think that's the only way you can succeed. If your family's out of order, your church is going to be out of order.
Yeah. With that, how do you study? How do you prepare for your Sunday services? What are some things that you do leading up to Sunday? I mean, we love the teaching styles, very just straight to the point, but very informative. I love your humor in there. But how do you prepare?
Well, I'm fortunate. I started out a long time ago traveling with Dan Finfrock on going through the text that you're going to be teaching out of with an inductive Bible study method. That just automatically leads you into an expository style of teaching. But I ask myself a lot of questions. Questions pop up in my mind as I'm going through the text, as I'm writing it all out. I was constantly asking questions, and so I'm doing research and looking for things. And even after all these years, I'm finding stuff that I didn't see before. Just because I'm asking questions. And today, with the technology that we have, with our Bible study programs and the internet and all the stuff that's going on, it's much easier to get tons and plethora of information. And you pray over it and you sort it out, and you go, okay, yeah, this is going to be a 2-hour sermon, so now how can I cut it down? And so you work at it from that angle. So I'm just blessed to be able to have be in the ministry to where it was just all books piled sky high on your desk and on the floor, and a yellow pad of paper, to being able to use a computer halfway in. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Speaking of exciting, what is it that's exciting the Lord's doing at Calvary Chapel Hemet? What's exciting to you right now? What do you see, or what is it that
Well, you saw the calendar that we have ahead of us. So there are so many things going on. I mean, that's exciting. You look forward to, the next event that the Lord has for us. And it feels like at times that we're all going 100 miles an hour. And as soon as we get through one of those things that we placed on the calendar, we've got 5 more ahead of us. And it's just like the Lord is... It's not busy work. If it were all us, David, we would just be exhausted. We would quit. But when you're in pace with the Holy Spirit, it's refreshing. Yeah, I get tired, but I'm not like throw your hands up kind of tired and ready for the next day. So yeah. The answer to that is everything that's on the calendar, and who knows what's going to be when we turn to the following months. We're all the way into January, and we've got Valentine's in February, so we're going to be going again.
Men's conference in January, Christmas.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with your first ministry?
Well, we do it together. She's got stuff, coming up. So the ladies' Bible study starting up again. And so I just want to play that supportive role as we're at home, talking about it. Now that our kids are grown and grandkids are, getting pretty grown up as well, many of them in college. So we can really give ourselves, to the church more. When I was younger, I thought, okay, I'm going to really dedicate myself to the church, and then when I get older, I'll be able to, take a break. It hasn't worked that way at all. It's just like, the Lord just opens up a new way to be able to be in over your head and love it at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. And we were at lunch just a little bit ago, and you were saying how you feel like you're slowed down.
Yeah.
But me and some of the brothers talking about, we feel like you're just ramping up. And so it's super inspirational for us to be able to look at you and say, hey, this is our Jacob and our Joshua and Caleb who's showing us from the front. So we appreciate that very much.
Well,
it's a good example.
That's very kind of you. But at any rate, I'll just let it go at that, okay?
How will you like to be remembered one day in 30 years?
Well, Charlie Kirk just recently said, he wanted to be remembered for his faith, and that became very obvious. So I'm going to back up a little bit deeper. I would like to be remembered as a good husband, a good dad, and good grandpa, and also remembered for my faith. I remember Pastor Chuck in so many different ways. When I was first introduced to him, I think I was in 6th grade, and it was before Calvary Chapel even existed. And the way that he treated us, he taught me how to water ski. So, so what I'm saying is, I remember him as a good pastor. Back to the water skiing thing, he took all of us kids in his own boat, taught us all how to water ski, or those that learned anyway. I did the same thing. I told my wife, I have to buy a boat. It was an excuse to buy a boat.
Babe, I got to buy a boat.
And I took our youth group out one time, and I thought, I'm never going to do that again. These are so nerdy. That was too much for me. So I never made it to his plateau. But I remember him as a good pastor. Saw the way that he was with his kids and Kay, his wife, and so I've had good examples, Pastor David.
One of the things that stands out to me the most is when I first came to Calvary Chapel Hemet, we met at a small little restaurant up the street. Can't remember the name of it now. Hole in the Wall in San Jacinto.
Oh yeah. No, that was where we were.
Delgado's.
Yeah.
And from that moment, one of the things that I noticed is you saw the wounds that I had received from the ministry. Ministry, as we said, can be painful sometimes.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, you started to tend to my wounds. And then eventually you started to encourage me to build on the things that God had shown me. And so I'm going to hold on to that. So one who takes care of his sheep.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. If there's something, you know how people are always struggling, even people we don't even know are struggling, hurting.
Yeah.
What's something you could say to them right now? Who's considering just giving up, walking away from a marriage, their kids, perhaps even ending it all?
Yeah. For the Christian, and the reason I put it that way is earlier today I was talking to my 40-year-old niece, and she and her husband are headed for divorce. Not a Christian. Pastor David, it is just so difficult to minister to non-Christians. Because when you say, here's what I would say to the Christian, Ephesians chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7, that in that, it has a remedy. We used to say when I was younger, kind of mocking, teasing about the medical field, here, take 2 pills and call me in the morning. It's the way that I would describe that particular text. Be anxious for nothing. That's a big challenge. When somebody is worried about their job or worried about their future or their marriage or their kids, when you say be anxious for absolutely positively nothing, it's like, why is that in the Bible? Why doesn't God understand my anxiety? And just let me, work my way through that? Because he has a better remedy. But in all things, through prayer, supplication. Oftentimes I ask them at that point, do you know what supplication means? Well, most people don't. It's just part of the Bible. Prayer, supplication, we read it and we just keep moving on. Not understanding what it means. It is prayer. It's really deep prayer. It's kind of prayer, Pastor David, that you can't utter the word that you want to say to God. And it's a sigh, and it's a moan, and it's a tear that trickles down the eye. So God really is understanding the anxiety when he says be anxious for nothing, because then he says sometimes it causes the moan and the tear to roll down your cheek. Be anxious for nothing, but in all things through prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving. For what? I'm going through this. You already know. God's paid the price. He sent his only begotten Son. Jesus willingly went on the cross. Yeah, I mean, you could start there. And you'd be able to see some other things. But in all things, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. You cannot comprehend this, but you can. You can be the recipient of it. Guard your heart and your mind. And in most cases, that's where the problem is. The mind needs to be guarded. The worry, the fear, the frustration, the hurt, the heart and mind. And so he simply says, if I just put it out there, be anxious for nothing, but in all things through prayer, supplication, thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and mind. But it doesn't end there. It says whatever's good, whatever's lovely, whatever's of good report, meditate on these things. And so to get our mind off of the anxiety and onto the good things that God has already done, is doing, and will do in our life. And then I would say to the person, take 2 of these in the morning, take 2 of these and call me in the morning. What happens after that? You've got that, to be honest, that momentary peace. But then the anxiety comes back in, and so you do it again and again and again and again until the depression is lifted. I hope that makes sense.
It does. As a pastor, have you been depressed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How do you minister when you feel that way?
It was a long time ago that I recall that. And right now, I can't even remember what caused that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what else to do other than come here to this place, so where my office was, like I said earlier, and just to be faithful to do the things that the shepherd was supposed to do, that the pastor was supposed to do. There wasn't a lot of excitement, a whole lot of joy. It was routine, but I recall that was the driest time of my life. But I was faithful to the calling. Yeah, I just didn't want to do anything different. And it was just going through the wilderness, feeling like you're alone, but you're not. So going through the wilderness with the Lord until you reach the other side.
You know, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is actually found in the book Gospel of Mark. It's a story of the disciples being on the water, Jesus walking to them. And he had them do a bunch of things. One of them, they wanted to make him king. And he said, get in the boat, meet me on the other side.
Yeah, when they got to the other side, right, yeah.
And so he's asking them to go. It's getting dark, evening, and he was sending them into a storm. God, who is sovereign and knows all things.
Yeah.
And no doubt these guys were scared, and it says that they were struggling and rowing, and the wind was contrary to them. But in the Gospel of Mark, it says that he was watching them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that, because that's the reality. Is no matter how lonely we might feel, God's always watching.
Yeah.
He promises actually to never leave us nor forsake us. And I love that.
As he's walking out to them, he says, do not fear.
Yeah.
It's me. But here's why he said that. These are bunch of sailors, and like sailors today, probably they had sailor stories myths, beliefs. And so one of the things that was a common belief at that time was that you would see that angel of death, as it were, walking on the water towards you just before your boat went down. So, here's these guys absolutely, struggling out there. And then they see this angel walking out to them in their mind and like, oh man, we're going down. How long can I hold my breath? And he says, do not fear.
Who's the person who in the Bible you're like, man, I love this guy. This is the person I want to meet when I get to heaven.
Oh, gosh.
This is a motivational, apart from the Lord Jesus, of course, but is there anyone that comes to mind that you're like, man, he's been a hero of mine?
Well, Peter comes to mind real quick. I mean, he was, he goofed up a lot, and the Lord allowed him to do a whole lot of really cool things. I mean, that ministry was after the Holy Spirit was in him, and it was amazing. But the guy that I really want to talk to the most is James. And not a whole lot about James, because James wasn't one of the disciples. Yeah. Half-brother of Jesus. What was it like being the pastor of the church in Jerusalem? When all that was going on, thousands of people coming to Christ as Peter's out there preaching. And, how did you handle all that stuff? All those baptisms, I really want to pick his brain.
Speaking of change, right? You had the Jerusalem Council and Paul having these issues with the Judaizers, and the church is saying, hey, go to Jerusalem and find out what they'll say.
Yeah.
And everything's changing for them. And I think the same thing's happening in our world, right? If we're not changing.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
It just kind of ties into kind of the story of a Christian is always changing.
Yeah. Well, and the reason for that is, the world changes.
Yeah.
And we talked about one of the, the brighter sides, one of the most exciting sides. I've been teaching at Calvary Bible Institute for 9 years. I teach the Gospel of John. So I taught at the very first class, of the whole school. And so we've been doing this for a long time. And I look at these young 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that are excited for Jesus Christ. I draw from their energy. I draw from their excitement. And it's just a great time. I see the change right now that's taking place amongst the young people. If the church doesn't change to meet them, how are we ever going to pass on the mantle?
Yeah. We see, I think for me, it's exciting to see our offices gone very young. As of recently, we got people in their early 20s and one that just graduated high school, and you hear the buzz that's happening around the office. And,
right.
And it is exciting to see that.
It is.
How has, speaking of change, like men, you see a lot of feminine men these days. And how is that impacting the church, in your opinion?
I guess I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it. It's not within the circumference of my world. I do come across that every once in a while, to where the husband is more involved in his video games, and that's just they're never going to amount to anything if they keep that style of life. They'll never be the leader of the home. They'll never be the father. They'll never be the husband that the wife needs to have. So I rarely come across that. Most of the time I see people who want to know what their role is as a man, as a young man, as a husband or a father, and are eager to fulfill that. They just want to be pointed in the right direction. That's most of the people that I come across. I realize everything else, the world out there is much different, but my circle, I come across some really brilliant young men.
What's the job of a man?
What's the job of the man?
Yeah, the job of a man. Christian man.
Well, it's to represent Jesus Christ first and foremost. In our ethics, our work ethics, in our citizenry, being a part of the United States of America to represent Christ. We can go further because of what I was just thinking about. A married man that's a father, it's his role. I've seen it and heard it so many times to where a guy would think that he's the head of the house. And when I hear that, I make a challenge because I want to make sure that we're going to be on the same page. So what is a head? You're not the CEO. You're the servant. And that's just the opposite of what we normally use of the head. But you're the priest of the home. So it just, if you've got to be that strong leader for your wife. She's got so many more responsibilities than most guys could ever imagine. Taking care of so many things with the children, and sharing those responsibilities, being with your kids. When you fall flat on your face, sit on the floor. Tell them, hey, I blew it here when Dad was scolding you there. I was out of anger, and you recognize that in yourself, and you share that with your kids, and you see how I've seen that in my own kids, to where the relationship with my father had a great dad, great father, but my relationship with my father was a little bit more of a hand, an arm's distance, and then I was able to bring, close in that gap a bit, as when I was a dad. And then I've seen my kids with my grandchildren where they brought that in even further. And it's just really, blesses me to be able to see that. So the role of a man is to represent Jesus first and foremost. He has to do that in every aspect of his life, every single one.
Anything that you'd like to share, anything on your heart that you'd like to share with us? Covered a lot of topics, but...
For the young folks out there, I think this is where I'd like to go with that. So when I was in high school, I was the president of Youth for Christ. It was our Christian club at Newport Harbor High School. I had been greatly influenced by Pastor Chuck Smith. By then, he had left the church that he was pastoring in Huntington Beach, but his impact on my life was kind of like it was everlasting. And so when I graduated from high school, went to college, it was Campus Crusade. And so I was invited to go to Campus Crusade. And they were doing some things that I didn't feel prepared to do. Not bad things at all. I mean, it was really great. Evangelism stuff. I just was totally at a loss. And I backed away and kept backing until it's called backsliding. And I spent most of my college years, all my Marine Corps years, at a distance from God. I obviously came back to the Lord. The Lord blessed me with a beautiful, wonderful wife. Began to have children a couple of years after I was married. And so, but I still was at a distance. And if there's anything I could say, I want you to know that you can never make up those years. Yeah, the Lord's blessed me. I was a backslider. I'm now a pastor. Oh, everything just worked out for him. I can't buy back those years. They were lost opportunities to serve the Lord the way that I can now. And so that's, never back down. Time is short. And so let's all push forward.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you, Pastor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too.